Hi everyone, my name is Bella and I have vEDS or vascular EDS. So I am talking to you all from the perspective of a vEDS patient. I have a passion for raising awareness of vEDS and sharing my experiences to help others who may be going through similar things. So I'm here to share my story with you all. I was diagnosed with vEDS when I was 10 years old, and it was because of my mom, who had two older children, realized that I was a little bit different from her other two. And she kept pushing since I was a toddler for me to get some further evaluation. So she noticed that I had very visible veins on my legs and on my chest, and that I would bruise easily, even though I wasn't a hyper child. And so the pediatrician would just kind of dismiss her. Um, and so eventually, when I was 5, he ordered lab work and it came back abnormal. And he sent me to a hematologist and he diagnosed me with von Willebrand. So from 5 to 10, I was living with a bleeding disorder. So I was already living a cautious life, avoiding contact sports and just, telling my mom, telling everybody around me to be very careful. But when I was 10, I was walking in a dugout, like a baseball dugout, and it had a chain link fence. I slipped down, and what should have been just a scrape across the fence on my knee, it split my knee open, and I needed to get stitches. So that's very unusual. And even when they were trying to do the stitches, I wasn't numbing very well. So I was feeling everything. They dismissed me again, just saying I was being a crybaby. And so after that, my hematologist, who was still following me, my mom kept pushing for more testing. And so he took a skin biopsy from me and sent it to University of Washington for, I guess he did a panel. And it came back positive for vEDS. So it was the first we had heard about it, and it was in 2004. Prognosis was pretty slim. There were like people with vEDS live until their 30s. And I'm the only one in my family with it because I tested my parents and they were negative. So it was a huge shock for my mom and my dad, for them to go through and kind of figure out how to raise me with this condition. It sounds very scary. But since then, I lived a relatively normal childhood. My major complications didn't really start kicking in until I was 18, or I guess 17. So the first thing that I had that I didn't even find out until years later was I had a vertebral artery dissection. I don't remember this at all, but my mom says when I was in high school, I was complaining of really severe neck pain, and I didn't take my diagnosis seriously at the time. So I didn't want to go to the ER to get checked. So I just pushed through. And luckily it healed itself, but the way we figured it out was that, so I've had yearly MRA scans to check my arteries to see if I have any aneurysms or anything going on vascular wise. So on the scans following that year, we started to notice on the report that it said that I had changes in my vertebral artery consistent with a chronic dissection. So we didn't even realize that until a few years later when we started comparing reports. So that was my first major thing. Luckily, I didn't have any severe complications. When I was 18, I had a small bowel obstruction. I was a senior in high school, and severe sudden pain out of nowhere in my back. I couldn't keep it straight. By the time we got to the ER, I couldn't walk. I was just folded over. And I had to get surgery because the obstruction made my intestine so huge. They had to remove that piece of the intestine and then reconnect me. So a few months later, I was in my first semester of college and I had a bowel obstruction again because I had scar tissue from the first surgery that caused a small bowel obstruction, and then they just had to release the scar tissue. So those were the first major things, and that's when I started to kind of take my diagnosis a little more seriously. And so I kind of was doing okay after that. And again, in college, I had a calf muscle tear. So nothing too severe, as I say, because, it beats the vascular stuff. But I was literally just at a line, I was at a nightclub and I was line dancing, and I started to feel some tightness in my calf. So naturally, and my calf was swollen. So we went to go rule out a blood clot. There was no blood clot, but there it turns out that I had a probably muscle bleed into my calf. And so since then, that took about a year and a half to heal. We didn't really, surgeons tend to avoid surgery with vEDS because it can lead to a lot more complications. So we let it heal on its own. It was healing and tearing until we finally just threw a boot on me, and I was in that, and I was in a wheelchair. So after the calf muscle tear, I graduated with my degree in psychology, and I pursued nursing school, which was something I've always wanted to do, but I was scared that I couldn't do it with vEDS. So I decided to go ahead and do it. I was hospitalized 3 times throughout the nursing school, 4 semesters. In between my the third semester and fourth semester, so the second to last and last semester, my colon perforated. I had a week summer vacation, and my colon perforated in that time. It was a sigmoid colon. Again, just suddenly out of nowhere, experienced abdominal pain. Honestly, the bowel obstruction felt worse, but the pain started to get worse. So I went to the ER. That's when we found out that I had a perforation. I was luckily able to avoid surgery. We let it heal on its own. And then I just had some like residual inflammation and everything after that landed me in the hospital again. But I was able to complete nursing school. I don't know how. And then the last, I guess, major thing that's happened to me is, so because of all of my GI issues, my hematologist was giving me some routine IV hydration so I can get the energy that I needed since I wasn't really eating. And there's a medicine that I would take for the von Willebrand's whenever I had big bruises or heavy bleeding, and it's called Stymate. And so there was a time where I got the hydration, I took the Stymate, and the stymate acts like a hormone in the body that tells it to retain water. So what happens is my body basically diluted my sodium levels. So my sodium levels dropped, and I had a seizure. And because of the seizure, my arms had like twisted in, and I dislocated both of my shoulders, tore some ligaments, had a couple fractures. And so again, they don't want to do surgery. So they wanted to see if it would heal. So for 4 to 6 weeks, I was literally having people like wipe me when I was going to the restroom, feeding me. So I wasn't able to work after I graduated nursing school because I couldn't even use my arms to take care of myself. So, those have been all the major things that have happened to me. And so I just wanted to share my story because a lot of the things we go through, it can seem very grim. It can seem very helpless and hopeless, and kind of like you can't get out of it. But you just push through, and you find a great support system around you, a great care team, and that helps get through these events. These support really, building networks in this community. So finding people who have gone through similar things really helps. So a big thing that I think helps is awareness and advocacy. As a patient with an illness that nobody really knows about, including healthcare professionals, you have to take matters into your own hands, unfortunately. So, teaching others about your condition, coming up with your own care plans, sharing it with people. I think it really helps save lives, and it also helps you feel like you're in control of your diagnosis. So that is something that I think has helped get me through a lot. And I just want to say that it's great to be a part of this community, even though it really sucks. But having this, I wouldn't change my diagnosis because it's made me who I am. So thank you for listening.